Beard and Board is a brewer and hypothetical distiller from the USA. Beaver DIY is an experienced home distiller from South Africa. Today they face off in a spirited international challenge to give each other ridiculous ingredients to work with and see who comes out on top. It's like that show Chopped, but with a lot more alcohol.
Hello and welcome back to the channel, and as you saw from the intro, we are doing something quite interesting today. The bearded legend himself challenged me to a still-off where each of us got a mystery basket of ingredients that we had to combine together to make a recipe and to distill or ferment and distill within 10 days. Let's quickly pop over to the chat that me and the bearded legend had regarding our mystery baskets and see what crazy ingredients he chose for me.
Yeah, brother, how you doing?
Good. So this is gonna be kind of crazy.
Really scared.
So you don't get a fancy basket. You get a plate with a dish towel on it.
There we go.
All right.
Lift your cloche.
Your ingredients are ginger,
Okay.
chilies, fresh or dried.
Okay.
The last ingredient,
Chocolate cake.
fucking chocolate cake.
Okay, so with the chocolate cake, am I allowed to use the sugars in it, or must it be a cake that I add into the bucket?
I put this on the vote so that the guys knew. I gave you a little bit of wiggle room here. You can use chocolate syrup.
Mr. Bearded, are you ready?
I am ready.
Basket's open now. I'm going to start with the easy stuff,
Okay.
and then we're going to move on. So I went a little bit easy on you for your source of sugar.
Okay. Golden syrup.
So just to quickly recap from the chat, we had a couple of rules involved in the whole competition. Number one is that you are not allowed to add any additional sugar to the wash except for the sugar that you got from your ingredients. So as you saw in the video, my ingredients was a chocolate cake. So yeah, I only was able to get sugar that was in the ingredients within a cake. And wondering's over, yes, we did try and ferment a cake. My other ingredients were ginger and chili. So I had to incorporate that somehow into the whole product. And that brings us to the second rule of the competition, is that all ingredients must be present within the final product. So whether you add it into the fermentation or in the distillation, it doesn't matter. All the ingredients have to be showcased within the final product. Next up, the next rule was we had to work towards a base gravity or a starting gravity of 1.090. And yeah, it was pretty difficult to hit it with some cake, but we got there. We'll check that in the B-rolls coming up soon. And I think this is the last and the final rule. It was that we had 10 days. So whatever ingredients you got and whatever combination you chose to distill it in or to ferment it in, you had 10 days from start to finish to complete the project. So if your fermentation did not finish out, I think 10 days on day 9 or day 10, you had to put it into your still and run it. This now being day 8 since we started, leaves me about 2 days if I open this lid and this thing is not fermented out. But the bubbling has now completely ceased for about 12 hours now. where no bubbles have formed whatsoever. So whatever gravity we have in here, we're going to have to distill it. And there was a little bit of a side rule, and the side rule was that you were allowed to use any water conditioning or nutrient that you feel suitable to get your fermentation to work. So if you wanted to use DAP or citric acid or whatever you wanted to add to your fermentation to get it to ferment, it's up to you. And then you can use any kind of still that you have access to. So there's no limitation on reflux pot, column, gin baskets, whatever you want to do, you can do whatever you want. What we're going to do now is quickly go into the B-rolls where we try to sparge a cake, and then I'll quickly just recap you on what happened there. This is the chocolate cake that I attempted to bake. I think it's beautiful. So we started with a big ass cake with roughly 4 kilograms of sugar mixed into, whether it was the batter, the icing, the chocolate sauce, the chocolate chips, whatever. Okay, so there was roughly 4 kilograms of sugar in that cake, and I think the cake weighed about 6 kilograms in total when it was all over and done with. We added that cake into a bucket. We then dissolved the cake using some hot water, and we mixed it all up to get a nice soupy cake. We ended up with cake stew. Then we tried to filter it and then add it into our into our boiler, and we tried to cook it for a couple of minutes so we can kill off any bugs. So we had to continuously stir it, as you're seeing in the video, to prevent scorching. We did not prevent the scorching. We had a tiny bit of scorching and we ruined the element. While we were cooking it, we added a couple of chilies and a couple of pieces of ginger into that, so it just cooks off and imparts a little bit of flavors. Just a quick tip, if you're ever working with chilies in your fermentation, do not go overboard. The capsaicin and the ethanol, they complement each other quite well, but they do bring out the worst on a chili, and it gets quite hot quite quick. So mute it down a little bit when you add chilies. Now, as you saw, then we started filtering this thing. It took roughly exactly 7 times of filtration to get this bad boy to get to a point where we actually had something that we can ferment. I think the oils and the butter and all the other stuff that is involved in cake at the end of the day made it quite difficult for any filter or any type of mesh or anything to catch any of the membrane, any of the sediment out, because everything was coated in oil and it just clumped together. But at the end, what we did is we took a very fine pillowcase, added everything into the pillowcase and hung it from the ceiling. Left it for, I think it was 4 hours for it to drain out. Then we ended up with what is left in the bucket right here. We then pitched our yeast, left it for 5, going on 6 days now, and we are left with this. So yeah, now we're here. Now what we need to do is we need to get this baby into the still so we can start distilling it. But before we do that, let's just quickly calculate how much alcohol we're going to have at the end of the day, and what our final gravity was of this bad boy. If you want to play along, see if you can guess the final gravity of this bad boy, keeping in mind we started on a 1.092, bubbling stopped, and yeah, leave the comment down below on what you think the final gravity of this bad boy was. The yeast we used, just in case you were wondering, was the bootleggers yeast, and we did a yeast combo as well, so we did bootleggers as well as a bread yeast, so there's some extra nutrient for the bootleggers. So yeah, let's quickly crack the lid, check the gravity, and let's see if you guys guessed it correctly. Ooh, yeah. Here, that's a nice lid full of oily stuff. Okay, cool. Now, as you saw, as we opened up the lid, we had quite a lot of oil still permeating to the top, and I think we still have quite a lot of oil left over in here. As you can see, there is pockets of oil everywhere, and we have a nice skim of butter on top. So yeah, as for the smell, I think the bootleggers yeast did its magic once again.
focused on the sugars on the in here and pulled up some nice green apple and yeah, almost a funky sour smell, but yeah, predominantly green apples. We'll see what happens when we start distilling this. If you watch the video from Bearded where he distilled a turkey leg, the oils within that turkey leg pulled out some quite interesting flavors from the botanicals he used. So yeah, let's quickly get into the gravity and then we'll filter it, get it in the still. Let's first make a hole so we don't catch too much oil. And boom. So we ended on a, if you guys can see that there, it looks like a 1.011. So as you can see there, we ended on a 1.011 with a starting gravity of 1.092. Doing some rough calculations quickly, that brings us to a potential ABV of 10.6, 10.7, around about there. So around about 11% alcohol in the wash here, sitting on about 20 liters. We'll see how much sediment we have at the bottom there, but we should end up with about 1.5, maybe 1.6 liters of product if we take it off the still. So yeah, let's get into that. So normally I'll just take this and dunk it directly into my still, but I want to remove some more sediment. So what I'm going to do is just pass it through one more filter just to see if I can catch some of this oily stuff on top and try and filter out some of the sediment. Okay, so what we were left over with is this nice chocolatey goopy stuff at the bottom and a lot of butter. So yeah, looks like most of it settled out quite nicely. Let's get into getting it heated up. So I know we're gonna get some puking because of what we have in the boiler there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna add a couple of coils of my copper wire down into the tube. This is just gonna prevent my still from puking too much. So hopefully we can limit it. Now it's time for the pièce à la résistance, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a couple of the herbs and spices that we had to add. Not a couple, but we're gonna add some ginger, some chili, and some cocoa powder into our gin basket to impart even more of that cake and ingredient flavor in our final distillate. So yeah, let's get some chopping done. Get our gin basket filled up because still at the back there, it's busy heating up. We started getting first drips just now. Slowly the drips are starting to form. So what we've done is we've turned down the power on our elements. We've switched off one of the elements completely and turned off the power and turned the other element way down low. So what we're going to do now is we're going to leave this bad boy in reflux for 15 minutes to ensure that we compress our heads and our foreshots. So once we start taking off at our takeoff speed, our heads and our foreshots come off first and they actually condense into a very smaller portion of our run. So we left this still in full reflux now, as you can see up top there, for 15 minutes. What we're going to do now is we are going to allow our foreshots and our heads to come off, and then with our foreshots and heads taken off, then we're going to go into jar number 1 and we will set our ABV that we wanted according to what kind of reflux we're going to be running and the takeoff speed at the bottom. So yeah, let's get into the actual run. So we're going to now start taking off the foreshots and heads. So as you can see, we have a very slow drip forming there. What we're going to do now is we're going to increase the power going into our boiler, increasing the vapor speed, and we're also going to start playing around with our reflux to ensure that we don't have that much being knocked down. We don't get as higher ABV as normal. There we go. There's first drips. After first drips, we took the still and we put it back into full reflux to get the column nice and balanced. Because I was scared of what kind of flavors we're going to pull out of the cake, I left it in full reflux for about 20 minutes. After I took off the foreshots and the heads, came off at 93%.
Then what I did is I dialed back on the power and I turned off the reflux. I only left about a quarter of the way of the tap open to allow very little reflux to happen, and we started taking off our hardscut. The hardscut we took off at 85%, that then dropped down to 80% and carried on 80% all the way up until about jar number 3. Then jar number 4 was 79, 78, 70, 65. The moment we hit 65 of that jar there, I started tasting some tails and smelling some tails coming in. Once again, placed the still back into full reflux so I can compress my tails, and ended up with 2 more jars, each at 75%. We're not going to taste the stuff on this video. What we're going to do is we're going to blend it and we're going to age it. I'm also going to leave half of the run or half of the blended product as a white spirit, because me and Bearded will be doing a tasting video where he discusses his flavors he got from his challenge recipe, and I discuss the flavors that I got from my challenge recipe. What I want to do is I want to impart some smoke into my end product to play on that chocolatey flavors that we got during the run. So yeah, that's a little bit of a spoiler. We did get some chocolate, some bitter cacao or bitter cocoa taste and smell from the run. Just want to play off of that with some smoke. Now how am I going to get smoke into it? Well, I'm going to infuse smoke into the jar. I'm going to take a normal oak stave. Now this is a medium toast oak stave, so it was at about 120 degrees C for 3 hours. This also came out of a ex-rum product, rum aging from one of the previous recipes on the channel. So yeah, what I'm going to do now is just toast or char this up and then add it to the jar. With our smoke now nice and captured inside of the jar and our stave still smoking away, what's going to do, it's going to coat the inside of this jar with a nice smoky flavor. So once we add our spirit into that, it's going to just absorb that nice deep smoky flavor. Let's get into the blending. Let's get everything into our jug and see what ABV we ended up on. Damn, that has an interesting smell. So at jar number 6, at 70%, we already started getting those tails coming in. So it's a deep, funky, almost when you put butter onto burnt toast, has that kind of smell. Because this has been standing for so long, the lids were left ajar for, I think it was about 4 days, and then I closed them all up and waited to do the tasting on this. But yeah, it actually smells nice and sweet, so we're going to use this as well. Jar number 8. That's super clean as well. Okay, now, so jar number 9. This bad boy has a ton of tails. Now, it has a very strong peppery note to it. So almost like when you just cut into a chili and your eyes start watering from it. Yeah, it has that kind of smell to it. So yeah, I don't want that in the end product. Ooh. Final ABV is sitting at comfortably at 75% ABV, so I'm going to call it roughly 2.1 liters at 75%, and I want to bring it down to about 55. I need to add 800 mils of water to this to bring our grand total of product to 2.8 liters at 55%. Luckily it hasn't loosed, so all the oils that we had from pre-distillation, you remember that buttery, foamy head that it had before we added into the boiler, none of that oils interfered with the proofing down, and I was pretty scared that's going to happen. So yeah, the product didn't loosh, so that's a good thing. Now for the aging part, like I said, I wanted to impart some smoke into it, but I also want to play on that chocolate note that we had from the distillation. And the best way for me to think about it is to do like a black forest cake, to pay homage
to this whole cake theme that we're going with, I'm going to be going with some cherry wood. Now the cherry wood I'll be going with, one is a nice dark toast cherry and the other one is a light toast cherry. So it's chips. They will impart a lot of flavor very quickly. So if you ever use chips, remember, don't use too much. And remember, we have that medium toast oak stave that is still smoking inside of the product currently. So what we're going to do now is quickly get our lid closed up again. Just want some of that smoke to impart and coat the cherry chips before we add our product. Now for the stuff we're going to leave as a white spirit so we can do the tasting with bearded and board. We do have a little bit of haze happening at the moment from the oils being brought out of suspension, but it's still nice and clear, so that should settle out in a couple of days. Now for our aging. Now this is going to stand for a good couple of weeks or months or years or whatever, depending on how long it takes for us to develop the flavor we want. And yeah, just a quick reminder, head over to Bearded and Board's channel. The link to the video for his challenge will be down in the description box. Almost forgot the secret ingredient, and that is I wanted to add some fruit in this to play, like I said, on the Black Forest idea. So what I have here is a tiny bit of cherries left over, so I'm going to add this into the jar as well. It's going to be more for color and probably a little bit of flavor. Yeah, let's get the cherries in. Thank you very much for sticking around this far. Remember to check out Bearded's video. Once again, link in the description below, and have a lacquer day.